Talks about Michael Landon, you will get hours and hours of stories. There is not a person that has come in contact with Michael Landon that doesn't have a wonderful story. He's just that type of person.
I remember Michael recruiting me to go to the creek and catch frogs, little froglets, so that he could put them in his mouth. And would just willy-nilly walk up to anyone at any given point in time and say, hi, and these frogs would jump out at them. And it was, you know, for me, hilarious, totally unexpected.
He was actually an artist who learned his art on the job. His contribution to television is on the level of Lucille Ball, isn't it?
Michael Landon was a massive television star. This guy was bigger than life. He had a vibe about him that when he walked into a room, you had to look at that. You couldn't take your eyes off him when he walked into a room. He just exuded this energy.
Mais derrière cette image publique de force de la nature, il y avait un homme animé par le besoin urgent, insatiable et profondément humain d'exceller et d'être reconnu.
If you don't need it badly enough, how can you go see dailies at 5 in the morning? Be on the set chewing on a styrofoam cup at 8, making jokes and setting up for the first shot, and closing down at 6:30 or 7 o'clock at the end of the day, and then having a drink with the guys just to be a good guy.
I don't think anyone knows how many midnight flights after work he took to different parts of the country to be with certain children who were ill. I don't think they knew how many charities and fundraisers he attended in order to help raise money for people who were in need. I think that's a great part of his legacy as well.
Michael Landon a apporté sa touche personnelle à tous les aspects de la série. Il en a fait le véhicule idéal pour partager avec le public les valeurs, les rêves et les espoirs qui lui tenaient à cœur, et tout particulièrement la famille.
Mike had one thing that he worked on his entire life, and it dealt with the creation of family. Problematic relationship with his mother, who was a difficult woman. There was a lot of chaos in that house, a lot of shouting and screaming, and Mike always longed for family.
His parents never spoke to each other. They were always at odds with each other.
The mother would say, tell your father dinner is ready. The father would say, tell your mother I'm not hungry. So there was this kind of an atmosphere.
What I like to remind people of is that with that childhood, you can become lots of different things. You could become a serial killer. You could become Hitler. Or you could become Michael Landon.
Michael a choisi de transformer le traumatisme de son enfance en action positive. Son intelligence innée et ses prouesses athlétiques lui ont permis de décrocher une bourse à l'Université de Californie du Sud. Un nouveau départ, des rêves plein la tête et la proximité de Hollywood, autant de facteurs qui ont permis à Michael d'entamer ce qui deviendrait une des plus grandes carrières de l'histoire de la télévision. De 1959 à 1990, le visage de Michael Landon a compté parmi les plus reconnaissables aux États-Unis. Encore aujourd'hui, Michael est connu partout.
The important thing to him always was the work. He loved his job, he loved writing, he loved directing, he loved acting, he loved putting it together. He loved film, he loved TV. It was just a complete joy to him. Nobody enjoyed their career, I don't think, more than Michael.
Il n'y a qu'un mot qui résume l'extraordinaire combinaison de talents de Michael Landon, le génie. Mais quel était donc ce génie? Pour le public, il était surtout visible dans son jeu d'acteur. Son charme et sa vulnérabilité transperçaient littéralement l'écran. Pour les acteurs qui ont travaillé avec lui, ça a été une expérience extraordinaire.
There was this emotional symbiosis. If his eyes filled with tears, my eyes filled with tears. If he smiled, I smiled. If I smiled, he smiled. It was like we fed off of each other.
Did you hear that?
Hear what, Pa?
It felt very special to have him let you into, I know it sounds weird, let you into his eyes, because when you're doing a scene, you're looking at someone's eyes and you feel like you're having this real life relationship with this very powerful man, and you feel very special.
As actors, we take certain risks emotionally in order to do work that will be something special, something unexpected or inspired or whatever. For Mike, here he had this whole show on his shoulders. So for him to take emotional risks as the actor was very dicey. And I remember this one time when our whole crop was leveled and his heart was broken.
I see you found the horses.
And he had to play this scene, and he wanted so much to let it all out, you know. And he really took a chance. With all his crew that adored him standing around, what if they would say, well, you know, he didn't quite get there, or what if, all those what ifs that can shut us down. What a big job. But I admired him very much that day because he really took the risk. You know, he jumped off the bridge.
Dans La petite maison dans la prairie, Michael a mis ses talents d'acteur à contribution en les partageant avec des comédiens de la jeune génération. Parmi eux, la plus extraordinaire était sans doute Melissa Gilbert.
I think also he had this real ability to talk to the kids, not like they were kids. He never talked down to any of us when we were kids. He talked to us like, you know, we were his peers. And I think if there was anyone on the set who actually was his peers, it was the kids. You know, he had a real connection. He had his most honest and frank and open conversations with them.
Please tell me why you left.
Il y avait aussi Matthew Labiorto, inoubliable dans le rôle d'Albert Ingalls.
I remember him as being an adult that was able to relate to kids so well and create this amazingly safe place where you could be a child and be creative and be an actor, and you just trusted him.
Le travail de Michael avec ses jeunes acteurs rappelle le thème de la famille, ce qui n'est pas forcément perçu par le public. L'acteur Merlin Olsen nous en parle.
One of the remarkable things about our cast of young people was that three of them, the two Laboratory boys,
because he had the ability to be this matinee idol, Michael Landon, but then he would step back and let somebody else have their moment in the sun and shine.
Si le talent d'acteur de Michael était le plus visible pour le public, ce n'était peut-être pas le plus important. Michael ne faisait pas que jouer son texte, il l'écrivait, ainsi que celui des autres acteurs.
One of the wonderful things I think that Michael did was to teach moral lessons in an acceptable way, in a way that would not upset people, and that at the same time would maybe change a few minds, make people behave a little differently.
Michael était très fier de ses scénarios. Il avait un style et un procédé d'écriture qui lui étaient propres. Ses collègues de l'époque se souviennent bien de ce procédé.
he never did an outline. He would just sit down at page 1 and start to write. And he could write a script in a few days.
Mike never learned to type, and so and he never wanted to learn how to type. And so Mike wrote all his scripts longhand on yellow legal pads.
He couldn't grasp that technical stuff. He felt, I think in his heart, it felt that it stymied him. I think he wanted the opportunity to have a tablet, and if he was in between takes on the set, or if he was in between cuts in the editing room, or sitting in the car driving to the set, from location, he'd write a scene.
He said, I like to carve my dialogue. And he likened it to carving as opposed to pecking on a typewriter.
To his own memories, to his own personal history, and find an event and bring it out. It was like the pearl in the oyster. You know, he would bring it out and polish it, and it would grow into a story.
Character was everything. What made people tick? What made them feel what they felt? How do I get the audience to feel that? The line that I heard him say the most, he would say, somebody has got to know what the hell this show is about. And you would think that's really a pretty simple statement, that someone has to know what the show is about. In most motion pictures and most television, no one knows what the show is really about.
He just really had an uncanny sense that if he came from his heart and said things that were important to him, that they would be important to an audience as well. And that's what he delivered week after week after week after week for 25 years.
Il est déjà remarquable en soi qu'un homme cumule les talents singuliers de jouer et d'écrire de façon aussi personnelle. Mais Michael avait en outre une troisième corde à son arc.
Michael was a really good director. And when he wanted to give his most sensitive attention to an actor, he was marvelous. But you can't do that all the time and get out an episode every 7 days. So he also, you know, had to be something of a lion tamer and a captain of the ship and my way or the highway.
Also, he was one of the best directors I've ever worked with, just not only knowing how to direct actors, but knowing the technical side of it and just being able to switch hats so quickly, writing an episode and then producing it, acting in it while he's directing and thinking about the next shot and where this camera's going to go and how the flow of the episode needs to go this direction.
Mike, when he wrote a script or read a script, he knew how it was going to end up on the screen. He knew exactly how it was going to be, and he went that way.
He knew what worked, when to go to a close-up, when to stay wide, when there's a line that was, when to say that key moment in a scene where you would hold, where most people would cut, you'd hold on Laura or you'd hold on Charles or to see that emotion in the eyes. Mike was big on eyes and faces, and if you look at his works, you'll see that.
He always seemed to enjoy acting, but it was almost like it was a sideline with him. The main thing was getting behind the camera and lining things up and watching the other actors and all that.
When he wanted something particular, he had a very special way of asking for it and a very personal way of asking for it that made you just want to give him everything.
Sometimes I would be struggling with a scene and he'd walk over and just whisper in my ear and he'd say one word and it would just push me over the edge.
What I was impressed by was the fact his complete knowledge of filmmaking and his quickness, his ability to sit down and fix a script and right on the spot.
And at the end of one particular act, he knocked out about a half a page or a page of dialogue. And so I came to him and I said, look, I just don't get why you cut the page out. He said, see, I don't need that dialogue because on this line up here, and he pointed to the last line that he left in, he said, David Rose is going to come in with the violins. What that meant was on the first time he read the script, not only read it, rewrote it, prepped it, shot it, edited the footage, but he was doing the music spotting as well on his first read. It was that quick, that instinctive, and I thought, this guy knows what he's doing more than anyone I've ever met in my life.
Acteur, scénariste, réalisateur et producteur éclairé, si Michael Landon a choisi la petite maison dans la prairie pour déployer ses nombreux talents, ce n'est pas par hasard, mais parce qu'il savait que contrairement à la plupart des séries populaires de l'époque, elle résisterait au passage du temps.
Mike said one day, 10 years from now, Bonanza, Little House on the Prairie, and Highway to Heaven will all still be in syndication all over the world. these shows are going to be watched by people's grandchildren when they're grandparents. Well, time has proved that Mike was right. What he did was of lasting import and lasting entertainment value.
En toute logique, le nom de Michael Landon aurait dû figurer régulièrement au palmarès des académies et des guildes de Hollywood. Ça n'a pourtant pas été le cas.
I sometimes think he was ignored by the Hollywood community and was not recognized as much as he should have been.
The Bonanza Boys, you know, were not looked upon as artists. And so it wasn't until really he had completed his work that it got to be understood what he had accomplished.
Mike never won an Emmy. I don't believe he was ever nominated for an Emmy.
He didn't go for that. I mean, he just didn't. It was like on the set, if we were on location, the star, director star, for God's sakes, always has a nice big trailer. Michael never had. If there wasn't room, sometimes he would share my dressing room. He said, "All right, Richard, if I just came in and did some rewrites on the script during lunch hour," I said, "No, come on." You know. So he'd do that, you know.
Michael would eat lunch with the rest of the crew, which, if you know anything about Hollywood, that's not even, most people have it in their contract where they don't have to eat with anyone else, and they have these huge trailers. Michael was always available, always accessible.
He never had anything special. Never had anything special for him that set him apart, that set him above.
The crew loved him, yeah. He was good to them, too.
Michael, to this day, is the only person I've ever heard of that when there was a surplus of the budget because his crew worked so fast for him, he divvied it up among the crew. That's insane. No one does that.
It went over with the crew very well. They loved him for it because he was one of them.
C'était un des leurs. Pour Michael, les acteurs et les membres de l'équipe technique qu'il avait réunis autour de lui formaient une famille.
There were a lot of people talk about it, but very few have actually created. And Michael had created that sense of family. You really felt like you were a part of the family, and you felt the responsibility of that. And Michael also made some demands of the family. One of the demands was that you were expected to bring your best.
If you look at Michael with his own kids, they could always go to him. And there was never a problem. You come in and talk. And he would listen. Well, he did the same thing with the kids on the set, I think. And it was not only in the scenes that they played, but if the kids always felt, if something wasn't right someplace, they could come and talk to him.
We all went through so much together. I mean, we were a family of performers and a crew for 10 years.
Aujourd'hui, les collègues de Michael se rappellent de lui comme d'un membre de leur famille.
It was like a favorite uncle that you just man, if you could spend a couple hours with him, you felt better about everything.
I think at one point in his life, he wanted a little brother, and that became me. And I was delighted to play the part.
He was nobody's mother. Cousin. You agree that you're intimate on a certain level and that you're part of the same clan, but you don't really know each other. That's what I mean by a cousin. And then, of course, he was everybody's daddy because he had the power.
The relationship between Michael and myself, I would characterize as a father-in-law, son-in-law relationship. The suitor that needed to respect Pa very much, and he dealt with me that way.
To work with Michael was a wonderful experience, not only because of his talent, but because he was a dear friend.
You could sit down and talk to him about anything, and it was just a really, I mean, that's a rare thing to be able to put people at ease.
En effet, il nous a tous mis à l'aise. La plus grande famille de Michael, c'était nous, son public.
There were so many of those sets that it just said closed set, no admittance. No one could come on. They were, just absolutely shut the door in people's faces. Michael just never turned anyone away. He said, absolutely, come on in, and when the bell rings and we start filming, you got to be quiet. Other than that, have a great time. And he would kid around and sign autographs and joke with the people. And he was just one of those, people that made you feel like he was your peer. He just welcomed you in and made you feel at home.
Michael touched the heart. He knew how to get inside of people. I think the one thing I hear more often than anything else is that I always cry when I watch Little House on the Prairie. And I think Michael knew how to reach in and get us to let those tears flow.
Mike had true sentiment, and Mike had true feelings, and he believed that the best way to connect with his audience was through those feelings and through those emotions, as opposed to the fashion of the day.
I really believe that he knew the whole time that
A plus